The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
Tonight on The Agenda.
It's that much scarier for someone who has a child with autism. Parents' biggest fear is what will happen when I'm not able to care for my son or my child.
Then, later on The Agenda.
We also need to pivot a bit from a charity perspective towards a rights perspective and look at the rights. Just like people with other disabilities, these kids and adults have rights.
Also tonight.
If we don't do something about this crisis that we are in, and it's considered a global health crisis, that in a couple of decades, that the most prominent cause of death in humans is going to be these resistant strains.
In her new memoir, Rita Miceli shares the highs and lows of her family's journey, raising and supporting their son and brother, Giaci, who was diagnosed with autism at age 2. Her book is called Giaci and Me, a mother's journey of loving and raising an autistic child. She's also an advocate for autism awareness, and we're delighted to welcome her to our studio during Autism Awareness Month. Rita, it's great to meet you.
Well, nice to meet you, and thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. I want to start with what it kind of feels like to be a published author, because I gather this thing started sort of 25 years ago as a bit of a parent's journal. And when you got it finished, you're holding a published book in your hands.
I know.
What's that moment like?
Incredible, incredible. I think back, and just the journaling was so therapeutic at the time. I actually started by writing down things that Giaci was doing, because I was trying to wrap my head around what was happening, because you're in such a fog, not knowing what is going on with your child and not having any answers. And as I wrote down, his progress or his, behaviors, I started writing down how it made me feel. And as a mother, what it was, the experience was like. And I just kept writing, and then kind of just put it in a drawer for many, many years. And then the TikTok kind of took off. And
we'll talk about TikTok in a second, but how did you even have, raising kids is tough enough.
Yes.
Raising an autistic kid is exponentially more difficult. How did you have the bandwidth to keep a journal?
It was therapeutic. Like I said, it really helped me process what was happening, because I couldn't wrap my head around it. I have 4 children, and my oldest was 18 months older than him. So she spoke nonstop, and he didn't. So I, wrote it down to try to kind of monitor what was happening, and that's really, it really helped at the time.
Not a coincidence, I gather, that this book is coming out now during Autism Awareness Month?
No.
Not a coincidence, right. How did your son react to the book?
I wish I could say he understands what's going on. He doesn't have the cognitive ability, but he sees himself on the cover, and he just loves looking at
It's a sweet picture,
pictures.
you got to admit. It's a beautiful picture.
Yes, yeah. And he's such a handsome boy and young man now, so.
Indeed, with a great smile.
Yeah.
He is a bit of a superstar on TikTok. How did that happen?
It's surreal, honestly, for our family. Well, my twin daughters were 2 years after him, and it was at the beginning of COVID, and they were doing some, art activities, and they just videotaped it and posted it. And people just couldn't get enough of Giaci. They just adored watching the videos. And then there were so many, like millions of views on certain videos that I think it resonated with other families, especially the one of him living as an adult in our home, how we set up our home. That one has millions of views. And I can understand why, because that's such an incredible fear for parents, the fear of the future and not knowing how your child will live. And so many people from all over the world, like we're talking England, Hungary, Europe, everywhere, reached out and were asking me questions of, like, Rita, how did this happen for you, and how did you handle, haircuts, or how do you handle the fear of the future and all of those things, and that's really how I realized that I had to take those journal entries and put them together for those that, to answer a lot of those questions for people starting their autism autism journey.
He has an unusual name. Do you want to explain the name?
Well, he's actually named after my father-in-law, and his name is Giacinto. So it's a custom for Sicilians and Italians, as many Italians would tell you, to name them after the patriarch, which is my husband's father. And but his name we shortened it, because my daughter, she couldn't say Giacinto when she was little. So she just kind of said Giaci, and it stuck. So, and now we love calling him Giaci. So.
But in real Italian, it would be Giaci, wouldn't it?
Giaci, yes.
Yeah, Giaci. No, I know,
Giaci,
Giaci.
yeah.
Okay, I got it. When you, I want you to take us back. I mean, you pointed out your older child was very verbal, and then Giaci was not verbal at all. Mm-hmm. And at what point did you think this is more than just I have a quiet child?
Yeah. I'm also a teacher. I've taught, newly retired, taught for 31 years. So I also had other children to kind of see. So I was comparing the differences. That's where there's an alarm that goes off in a mother's, the pit of your stomach, where you say, okay, I know there's something wrong, but what is it? I had never met anyone with autism. I knew nothing of autism at that time, other than watching Rain Man, which I think was very common at the time for people to know that as the first, person with autism. And I struggled with it incredibly, because, it's something that, at the time I just didn't want this to be true. And once it really came to the realization that this is what we were dealing with after getting an official diagnosis, then we kind of started educating ourselves and tackling all of the things that we needed to.
The thing about Rain Man, though, as Tom Cruise shows in the movie, he does have some incredible skills that other people don't have, right? You can drop matches on the floor and instantly know there's 1,224 matches there.
Yes.
Or he knows,
He was a savant.
He was a savant, right.
Yes.
Does Giaci have any of those unusual qualities?
I think it's his charm that is his his gift. He charms everyone with his smile, with his personality. I think it's his childlike behaviors as far as just loving life and loving being loved, and that's all evident in his TikToks, and I think that's
He's smiling
what
all the time. It's true. He's just got this most happy, glorious smile all the time.
And his sisters just adore him. So I think that also resonates with so many people, is to see the beauty in what he offers the world.
You talk about actress Rita in the book. Who's actress Rita?
That's the Rita that has to put on, the face of, I can do this, I can get through this, even though inside I may have felt broken oftentimes. I felt that actress Rita would have to come out during, functions that we had to go to, or work even, like getting up every day for work, when we, my husband and I would have no sleep because Giaci would be up all night and being exhausted. So there's the actress Rita that would come out.
You get good at it, though, right?
Yes, I think so. You master it at some point.
Right. Here's a quote from the book. You say, I envisaged myself carrying a tremendous number of bricks in my arms, but the heaviest bricks were the shame, guilt, and anxiety. What's that about?
I think it's, as a mother, I carried him for 9 months. I gave birth to him. I did everything right. And then you feel like you've done something wrong because, that he doesn't have all the abilities that my other children had. And, it's a mother's guilt as far as, what went wrong. When in actuality, it took me a while to realize through talking with others and professionals that, I didn't give him hazel green eyes. I didn't give him the color of his hair that was given to him. And it's such a gift to accept him the way he is. But it took me a while to get to that. So the carrying of those bricks, as I put it, and the load of it, it was heavy, but I had to carry it for a little while until I was ready to fully accept what we were dealing with.
Did you always intellectually know that you didn't do anything wrong? This was just an emotional reaction?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Like I knew in my head that I didn't do anything wrong, but my heart hurt so much.
Simple daily tasks showed the teamwork it took for your family to do things together. For example, when you're boarding a plane, you describe, and here's another quote, John was breathing heavily, the girls were mortified and stressed, and I ached with pain. but we made it.
Yes.
So what's it like to have these sort of little victories along the way?
Oh, it's triumphant for us. It's, you know, the little things that people take for granted, we don't, because we know how much work has to go into it. And then to see the joy at the end of it, like even like when we go on a trip, we have to do the work as far as getting him accustomed to, you know, getting in the car to go to the airport, or the virtual simulations of him watching how it will feel like to get onto a plane, because his anxiety, change is difficult for anyone with autism, especially my son who can't process, you know, the changes that are happening in his environment. There's the sensory overload and all of those things that he has to kind of calibrate to. And we do all the hard work. He does all the hard work. No one works harder than him, but ultimately we set him up for success. And then, you know, we can say we've had so many beautiful family trips because he's been a part of it. Like, we are not going to leave him behind. He's going to come and join us. And every task or every occasion, we tackle it in the same way. One of my daughters was married in August, and we're preparing for my second daughter that's getting married soon. And we have to bring him to the venue to be comfortable with the venue. We bring him to the church that, you know, the ceremony will be at, and get him accustomed to what it will be like and how he, you know, things that he'll have to do. My daughters both want a special dance with their brother. So we practice that. And for my daughter that was married in August, we forgot to include one thing that we didn't prepare for, and that's his sensitivity. You know, he has to touch. And when we practiced her and him dancing at home, and he danced with therapists, and we all practiced how he would be dancing to the song, so he knew what exactly to expect and how to help him be successful. We didn't think about her dress being so beaded and how that would bother him. So he still managed to do such a wonderful job. He just hovered over her without touching her like he did in practice, but he hovered over, and still, it was such a beautiful memory that they'll have forever. And there was not a dry eye at the event, at the wedding.
He figured it out.
He did.
You don't have what you'd call a spontaneous life, though, do you?
No, definitely
You've
not.
got to plan for pretty much every eventuality that Giaci will be involved with.
Definitely.
So you got to be like, oh my God, you got to be on top of your game like nobody else.
Absolutely, yeah. And you know what? It's our perfect imperfect life. You know, we adjust, and like I said, nobody works harder than him. And why wouldn't we to help him?
How old is he now?
28 years old.
Okay, that raises some questions about what happens when kids, quote unquote, age out of services.
Yes.
Tell us about that moment. I mean, I guess after he turns 18, does your life change in ways that you didn't imagine?
Well, you know, apparently, perhaps it's the government or society think they're cured at 18. That's not what happens. It's a lifelong disorder. Nothing changes as far as Giaci's, you know, abilities or inabilities, or how he conducts himself, or his, you know, life. However, the government seems to feel like they push us off a cliff where we're not harnessed with anything. And it's like starting all over again, where you have to go onto another wait list, because the wait lists are endless. So you're on another wait list for the adult sector, and then you have to go through the DSO. There's an interview process, and again, wait lists after that once you actually have the interview process. And it's excruciating for parents. I can attest to that, because how horrible it is to have to repeatedly tell someone what your child cannot do, and at that age, you know, should be doing. And it's exhausting, it's heartbreaking, and it's just like putting salt on a wound. You know, why does that have to happen? I don't understand. And then what's offered as an adult is really sad. I mean, we have a housing crisis. It's that much scarier for someone who has a child with autism. Parents' biggest fear is what will happen when I'm not able to care for my son or my child. And, you know, there's wait list after wait list for housing.
Just for group homes, I guess.
Group homes, absolutely. And, you know, like, we have set up our home for him. Like, we've planned for this, knowing the situation. But it shouldn't be like that, Steve. It shouldn't be like that for parents. It's stressful enough to have, you know, the daily ins and outs of the way the system has failed us. So to continue to have that in your older years, is disheartening.
Can you give us a sense of how independent Giaci can be right now at age 28?
He cannot live alone. However, because of our behavioral intervention, he has learned so many skills. I always joke, you know, he does better laundry than my husband. And my daughter will joke that he taught her how to do how to do her laundry. So he, with step-by-step instructions and rewards, and you know, we reinforce it, and he masters it, and we continue. And sometimes a skill may take, you know, a couple weeks. Sometimes it takes months.
What about money? Does he know money?
He knows. We've taught him what, you know, money is, and that. But the value of money to him really doesn't have any importance.
Can he take a bus?
No,
So
we haven't taught that.
How does he get around?
He has to always have someone with him. He doesn't understand danger, and that, again, is his ability. Every child with autism is different, but my son cannot be left alone. He doesn't understand danger, so he always has to be accompanied by someone.
So if he got to an intersection walking somewhere, walk, don't walk, red lights, green lights,
Yeah.
none of that?
No, we've worked on it. However, I think as his mother, and my fear of him getting hurt in any way, I haven't been able to venture into allowing that even. I couldn't do it. Yeah.
Now, when he was a younger kid, presumably he got services that a lot of younger children are able to access when they are of that age, before they age out. What kinds of, again, for people who don't know, what kinds of things was he given exposure to?
Okay, so 25 years ago is very different than now. Things have changed. It's been an ongoing up and down of changes constantly over all these years. So 25 years ago, we were on a wait list again, and it was for years, the wait list. And then when he finally did get picked up at the age of 5, then he was going to age out at age 6. So we were a part of the class action lawsuit that we were fighting the government, because it was an injustice to finally get picked up and then to be dropped, when early intervention is so fundamentally important. Early intervention will determine and help the child for their future, you know, abilities in life. I mean, it's not hard to understand. Invest in them when they're young, so that when they're older, they won't be as dependent on the government and on society or the community. Invest so that they gain those skills. So when he was dropped at age 6, my husband and I, we did what we had to do. And my husband worked more than anyone could or should have to work, 7 days a week, morning till night, to be able to fund his therapy. And it was something we decided as a family we were going to do, and give him the best outcome we could. But you know, governments are there to help us, and we felt truly abandoned by them.
Tough question here. Do his siblings feel that they kind of missed out on stuff that their friends got to enjoy because you had to direct so many financial resources to your son?
I feared that so much. I was always fearful of that and conscious about it. So we would always make sure that our daughters had everything that they needed as well. They didn't go without. Yes, there were moments of perhaps being embarrassed if Giaci had a meltdown publicly, or if we had to leave early at certain things, but they knew, they just adore their brother. They've always had such a strong bond with him that they knew it wasn't something he purposely did. This is just how he is. We accept him and love him unconditionally. And so there was never any, oh, this isn't fair. It wasn't fair that Giaci, you know, didn't have the abilities they had, so they accepted it.
Was there ever a moment where one of them said to you, dang it all, why can't he just be normal like everybody else?
They've never said that, but I think we all, as a family, wished he could have had more opportunities and more, you know, like his, you know, others that of his age. I think I'll always wish that, but you know, it doesn't diminish the love and the, you know, the great joy that he gives us. And honestly, he teaches us so much. My girls have gained in so many other aspects in having a brother like Giaci.
There's a level of empathy that just would not have been available to them had he not been the way he is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you see that.
Definitely, every day.
Well, let's, in our last minute here, have you give I mean, we've talked a lot about politics here today because this is a very political issue. You want to tell the education minister what you think he ought to be doing?
Definitely. It's not enough. It's just not enough what's being done. More needs to be done. More funds, more supports, more education, more awareness. It's not enough. It hasn't been enough for the past 25 years. And if it's not addressed, it will just compound, and I'm fearful of what is to come. These children, they become adults, they become strong, and many are aggressive. And that will cause more strain on the medical system, on mental health, and all of those aspects. So more has to be done.
The book is called Giaci and Me, A Mother's Journey of Loving and Raising an Autistic Child. You don't mind if I say you guys are heroic.
Oh,
like you really are.
Thank you.
I mean,
Thank you for saying that.
Above and beyond the call of duty. It's just,
well, that's because of Giaci. Giaci gives us the power and strength to do more, and he is our hero.
brava. Thank you, Rita.
Thank you.
Ontario's recent budget announced a $60 million increase to provincial funding for autism programming. But with 60,000 kids on the wait list, how much of the job can that money get done? Is the current Ontario Autism Program providing youth with the support they need? Let's find out and ask Margaret Spolstra. She is the CEO of Autism Ontario. Jessica Bryan, psychologist and senior clinician scientist at Holland Bloorview, and Anne Borden-King, co-founder of Autistics for Autistics Ontario, a Canadian affiliate of the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, and she's a host of Non-Compliant, that's a neurodiversity podcast. And we welcome everybody to our table here at TVO tonight. Margaret, I want you to start us off, if you would, because I suspect for people who don't have autistic kids, they don't know how this all works. So, a parent has a kid who gets a diagnosis of autism. They want public services, they want programs for their kid. Where do they start? What do they do?
Well, they can start by coming to Autism Ontario, and we will get them set up to where they need to be. They need to get a diagnosis, they need to get access to programming, and they need to understand the nature of what autism is and what it isn't.
Now, when the Ford government came in 5+ years ago, they made some changes. What did they do differently?
They actually took a lot of their ideas from a group that was formed to inform the government of Ontario about its Ontario Autism Program. And so what they did was think about that with the input from autistics, from parents, caregivers, from community members, and people and researchers, people who understand collectively what's at stake.
So theoretically, the changes should have been better.
That's right.
Theoretically.
Well, the changes were good. And I would say the direction was a good one for children and youth. And I think the idea of coordinating those activities in those, especially in the early years, getting people to diagnostic supports quickly, gaining access to programming in a clearer pathway, and in creating opportunities for families to participate in local community programs to give their kids a good start, and to continue that as they enter to school.
All right, with that background in place, let's get some feedback. A lot of people were not happy, obviously, with those changes that were made 5+ years ago. Were you one of them?
Well, I think the government made some good choices. I would agree with Marg in terms of how they expanded the idea of what service is. It was a good start, I would say. For example, speech language pathology became included, occupational therapy became included, devices, communication devices for non-speaking kids, there was a stipend for that, and they began just the very early stages of expanding out, which is what we need to do. We need to expand the idea of autism services beyond just therapy, right? Into really looking at, because I think we can do better with what we have. I think right now what we need to do is really look at best practices in other areas, such as in the United States, and actually start to build newer programs.
Follow up on that, though, Anne. The changes that this government brought into place 5+ years ago, you've told us what you like. What changes do you think you don't like and didn't work out?
Well, we're still operating on a segregation-based model.
Which means what?
Which means that young children are placed in often very intensive, segregated, separate clinical areas for early intervention, and then they still are generally streamed into segregated special education classrooms, and there isn't enough integration and inclusion at school. Then they end up being segregated into segregated group homes, again, removed from society. So what's really missing in a lot of this is an inclusion mandate, goals to get better inclusion in society for autistic children and for autistic adults, because that's what impacts, one of the big things that impacts the quality of life.
Jessica, is there a consensus out there that this is in fact the way to go?
So I would agree with what we've heard before already about sort of the expansion of the kinds of services being a really good thing. So making sure that we have, so applied behavior analysis, what was previously sort of the only type of support that was funded in the past, and now we have these other services that you've heard about. I agree that what we really need to work on still is integration into the school system. So one of the things that the new model does provide is for kids who are just before they enter school, there's a program called Entry to School, and those kids get a little bit of extra support in a very sort of well-supported environment to get ready for school. And then when those kids move into school, there's a little bit of support that goes into the school with them. Now, if every kid could access that, that would be ideal. And right now, it's only available to kids who haven't started school yet. So it's just within that age group. It would be a nice model to expand that to kids who are older and having more difficulty in school, and sort of really finding ways to integrate whatever therapeutic supports they've been getting into their school environment. That's, I think, where we really need to move forward now.
Let me share some stats and then have you comment on those. And Sheldon, if you would, I'm at the top of page 2. Let's bring this graphic up. Only 20% of kids in autism programs have core service funding, apparently. Now, here's the Trillium, which submitted a Freedom of Information request. The Trillium, an online publication covering Queen's Park, and they recently learned that there are more than 67,000 children registered for the Ontario Autism Program. That's as of the end of last year. Fewer than 14,000 of the 67,000 have received funding for core clinical services, and a little over 17,000 are registered to receive core services, but this includes those waiting for an interview and funding allocation, or those who recently aged out of the program. Let's understand this better. Jessica, what's involved in these so-called core clinical services?
Right. So the core clinical services are those services that we were referring to. So they can include applied behavior analytics supports, speech-language therapy, occupational therapy, mental health supports, as well as the services for the technology for communication that we heard about. So these are sort of what they're considered the core services because they have sort of the greatest bulk in terms of sort of therapeutic contact with families. However, there's lots going on for families while they're waiting for those core services. So there's once you get your name on the list for the Ontario Autism Program, your family has access to something called Foundational Family Services. And those services are a range of offerings, including workshops about sort of understanding autism better, managing things like toilet training, or sort of kids who are having difficulty managing big emotions. So they have some supports to get started right away. And then sort of for younger kids, there are two things that families have access to. So one is called Caregiver-Mediated Early Years Services. Lots of words.
Lots of, it's a big acronym there, but anyway, keep going.
But essentially what that program is families can choose one of 6 different models. They're all evidence-based models, and they are ways that parents can be taught specific strategies to interact with their child in a way that helps them feel empowered, meets their sort of their family priorities and goals, and really helps them to support their children in the home. Okay. So that's something that families can get that's outside of those core services.
I suspect, Anne, the answer to this is obvious, but let's put it on the table anyway. The importance of getting these services in a timely fashion for young kids who have autism is what?
It's very important for kids and families to get support. And I think there's been a lot of discussion about early interventions. I think one of the pieces that's missing is looking at quality of life across the lifespan. And what I would say is that we've been kind of approaching autism for many years. Policymakers have been approaching autism from sort of a charity perspective, right? We need to help these kids. We need to give these kids these therapies, and speech language, occupational therapy are extremely important. But we also need to pivot a bit from a charity perspective towards a rights perspective and look at the rights. Just like people with other disabilities, these kids and adults have rights. They have the right to an inclusive education. They have a right to safe living in a group home. We need to regulate the group homes. We need to get people integrated more into living in the community, and that will improve their quality of life, because no amount of therapy can help you if you're in an abusive group home, or if you're segregated in a classroom and you have mental health issues, or if you're in poverty. So you really have to take a whole systematic approach to it, as well as we do with other disabilities.
Mark, we showed those numbers earlier. There is a big backlog in a request for services. The provincial government, in its most recent budget, put tens of millions of dollars towards trying to do something about that backlog.
Yes.
How much impact can it have?
That depends on how they spend it. So we're still waiting to hear what that might look like. And indeed, there'll be additional funds required to serve that large number of people, and that can't come soon enough. And I think investment in a variety of ways. One is that making services available more equitably across the entire province is critical. I think the piece about the integration with school years is absolutely fundamental. For this program to work at its best, MCCSS shouldn't have to do the only weightlifting.
Oh, the terrible acronym there.
Yes.
Ministry of Children's,
Community and Social Services.
Okay, there we go.
But education and that ministry and the Ministry of Health need to work together to make this work. So funds towards this specific program, and I couldn't agree more with Anne about this being a rights-based issue, not so much as we shouldn't think about it as charity. This should be about what does it mean to live and be a Canadian citizen and to grow and thrive and learn. We wouldn't say, we don't have enough funding this year for kids to go to school. People would laugh at such a statement. That needs to be true for all the children, all the students, and to think about that in the context of a life course.
Do you think governments still convey the impression that they are treating this as a charitable thing rather than a rights-based thing?
I think those words aren't being used in that way, but sometimes the funding looks like that. People talk about when is it going to be enough funding, and that even asking such a question suggests that perhaps it's been enough. And when we haven't achieved a way for people to be fully included, when we haven't given them the tools to learn and grow, when we haven't supported their families in a way that allows them to be parents first, those are the things, and not prepare autistic folks to get jobs and be participating members of the community in the ways that they want to be and can be. So all of those things, it's a different mindset.
The minister who's responsible for this file, we invited him to appear on this program with you. Okay, his people declined, they're allowed to do that, but they did send an email statement that said, in part, in our most recent budget, we have further increased funding for services by an additional $120 million. Families registered in the Ontario Autism Program can access a range of services and supports. Invitations to core clinical services continue to be issued to families based on their child's original date of registration in the OAP. They go on to say, in July 2021, we announced the Ontario Autism Program Capacity Action Plan. The Workforce Capacity Fund is a key initiative under the plan that provides grant funding to children's service providers and community organizations for initiatives that build clinical capacity in the OAP with a priority focus on northern, rural, and remote communities. Now, just to clarify, because we said 60 million in the intro, and they've said 120 million here, there's a one-time 60 million bump up as well, I gather, that brings it up to 120 million. Anyway, this, I don't know why everybody, well, I guess the bureaucracy talks in bureaucraties, because that's what bureaucracies do. That was a very bureaucratic answer, but can you sort of dive down into that and explain whether or not they've got a leg to stand on with this?
I think what they're trying, so if we think about these, if we think about why families are waiting for core clinical services, let's say, they're waiting because there are several steps. So we talked a little bit about the families wait. When they first have concerns about their child, they wait to get a diagnosis. In our research, we have found that families are waiting sometimes 2 or 3 years before they can access that diagnostic assessment. And families—
That's way too long, right?
It's way too long. Yeah. And parents are telling us, I have noticed that something's going on with my child that seems a little bit different since they were under a year of age. So parents, we really need to listen to parents, first of all. So people who are seeing kids, we need to listen to the parents when they have concerns. But then once families get that diagnosis, they're then waiting for there was mention there of an interview. So that's called a needs-based assessment. So through the Ontario Autism Program, families receive a lengthy, detailed interview to try to understand what are their child's and family's needs. But then there's another piece, which may be that there isn't right now enough capacity in the system, meaning that there aren't enough skilled, trained individuals to provide the supports and services that are needed. Yes. So there are a few areas where there are gaps, and that's where the capacity building initiative came in, was to try to get people to, for an example might be that people who work in mental health may be good at understanding anxiety, but hadn't sort of understood how it applies to autism. So that's a situation where you could train up mental health professionals to understand anxiety and autism and provide extra supports that way.
Let me pick up on that and go to Anne on this, because I ask people this all the time. If you doubled the health budget in Ontario, would the system be twice as good and would we be twice as healthy? And everybody says no. Right? Everybody says no, because there's so many built-in problems in the system that simply doubling the budget wouldn't make you twice as good. Right. What if we took that same question and put it towards autism services? Would the system be twice as good if we doubled the budget?
I think that's a really important question. And I think some of the conversations, you end up kind of rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, right? Because if you're not making the systemic changes that are really needed to have an inclusive environment, a safe environment, an environment where people understand each other, right? Then you're just pouring more money into a system, like I said, that's kind of based on a segregation model. Every autistic person, and in my organization, we're all autistic, it's autistic-led. Everybody wants to be understood, included, and safe. And these are, you can't necessarily quantify that, right? That's not only about providing therapy, but it's also about educating teachers, educating the public, educating even policymakers on how to communicate and what the needs of the community are. So we really tend to micro-focus on fixing the kids, but there is some fixing that needs to be done in the broader society in terms of education, and those are the kinds of initiatives that we're working on at A4A.
Having said that, Marg, I talk to politicians about this all the time, and they say there is no amount of money we could spend that would solve this problem. Doubling, tripling, quadrupling the budget, there is just so much demand for all of these services, we could never satisfy demand. Is that fair to say?
I would say that's not fair at all. I'd say that we haven't invested for a long time. And when we did invest many, many years ago, it was institutional settings. We've moved from that, but we haven't then also reinvested in communities in the way that can do the kinds of things we're talking about here today. So I don't know what that top number is. Is there one? I think when we talk about people, plus we're seeing an increase in prevalence rates. Yeah. So we will continue to see more folks looking to be understood, to be well supported.
But do people in your world understand that there is a finite amount of money that any government can spend on these services, and that's life?
Of course, and that means also looking at larger systemic issues about housing. Looking at a place, not only a housing and a place to live, a place that's well supported, not just bricks and mortar. And looking at also opportunities for job and for inclusion, for employers to understand who their very valuable autistic employee is and how they can best support them to give their best. So there's so many pieces like that that are harder, as Anne said, to quantify and think about what does it mean to be a more inclusive society. And sometimes dollars are attached to that when it comes to educating, but it really is about people desiring to be neighbors and fellow classmates, teammates, colleagues in society.
Gotcha. Anna, I wanted to ask you about diagnosis, because everybody here today has said early diagnosis is key to getting this show on the road. So just explain how that works. Who does the diagnosis in the first place?
Well, I mean, there are licensed tests. They're actually quite expensive. They're licensed by just 3 companies, and they're typically provided by a developmental pediatrician or sometimes an autism center.
So not your GP, in other words. You're doing something else in this case.
Yeah, there's a referral, and the diagnosis is useful not just to know and to know what services are needed, but it's also useful in terms of when you go to school, being able to get accommodations at school. And so that really diagnosis helps the parents to be able to advocate for their child to be included in a mainstream classroom, for example.
Well, let me ask about that. Parents must be, they must be so frustrated when they are waiting for this diagnosis that they are waiting and waiting and waiting for and can't get. What should they do while they're in that waiting period?
So first, I'm just going to add. So in most of Canada, the diagnosis can be provided by a physician or a psychologist, and in some cases, or a psychiatrist who is a physician, and then in some cases by a nurse practitioner. So there is some breadth in terms of who can provide that diagnosis.
Nurse practitioner can diagnose autism?
Yes, if they have particular sort of extra training. Okay. And then I will just add too. I'm grateful for this shift, but there has been a shift in the past 5 or so years away from some of these specific tests, which I think is a good thing. So the tests that Anne was referring to are expensive and are very highly controlled in terms of who has access to them and who can use them. What we've found over time is that if you can train a community of, let's say, community pediatricians to identify autism, make a diagnosis, and support the kids and families so that families aren't only having to come to sort of specialized centers. And we're doing a lot of work through an initiative called ECHO, which stands for Extensions for Community Healthcare Outcomes. And it creates a virtual community where we train community physicians around kind of what to ask parents, what to hear from parents, what to listen for.
Okay, but back on the original question though, what are parents supposed to do when they wait and wait and wait and wait for that diagnosis?
Exactly. So the first point is that there are ways that we're trying to help families wait less, which is this capacity building. But while families are waiting, there are some services that are available. So if, let's say, your child has speech and language delays, there is publicly available speech and language. There are services available. Families can, in Ontario, what we recommend is that families bring their kids to those like early on centers, which are developmental centers where they can play with other kids and just have exposure to kind of how other kids play and make friends and participate in the community that way. Sometimes we recommend that families look into daycare if they're really struggling to kind of find social opportunities for their children, just so they can kind of be part of the society from the very, very beginning.
Could I jump in for a moment?
Please.
Because there is a solution that people didn't like, and that was Minister MacLeod at the time Lisa MacLeod suggested. She suggested means testing. Means testing is where it's like the Ontario Trillium Drug Plan, actually, that's already in existence, where you state your income and you fill out a lot of forms. And if you have a high income, you pay for a certain percentage of the service, whether it's we don't have it now, but whether it's diagnosis, whether it's therapies. People with higher incomes would pay a little for those services, and then that would free up money in the kitty for people that don't have income
What do you think
to
about that
access
idea?
those services. We've always supported income testing for autism services because obviously it's more equitable because people that have a lower income will have more access. There will be a shorter waiting list, and people with a higher income will just have to pay a little bit for that.
Did you get that through?
No, it was extremely unpopular, unfortunately, but it shouldn't be forgotten, and at least as a partial solution.
We're sadly, the time flies around here all the time, but we're down to our last few minutes, and I do want to talk about, we've talked mostly about young people here, but I do want to talk about adults. What kind of supports are in place, need to be in place, to help adults who are autistic?
The first thing we need to know is that there are very few services available for autistic adults in this province, in this country. So we have a long ways to go there, but it starts in school years. So thinking about those transition years into adulthood are critical. Right now, there's a requirement in school years to actually plan for that transition, but there isn't often something to transition to.
Because when you age out, it's like you fall off a cliff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you need to have something, you need a handoff of support and saying, okay, here's what is here and here's how we can build it. And what we need to do is to be thinking about the wide range of the autism spectrum, because there are folks who are college and university bound. There are folks who are work bound in terms of where they may be heading. But right now, the majority of folks are not doing a lot. They're sitting at home with their parents.
Jessica, a guy we've had on this program many times talking about this, and he is a great champion for this issue because his son, Jaden, is nonverbal autistic. You all know him, Mike Lake, the Member of Parliament from Alberta. Great guy. He's talked a lot to us about a national autism strategy. I know this is all provincial jurisdiction, but he thinks we need a national approach to this. Is that the way to go?
You know, I think it is. I think that what we're finding is that there's so much variability across provinces and territories in terms of inclusion and sort of job opportunities, living opportunities, sort of as kids become adults. I think a national strategy is a way to sort of put into place some approaches that are universal, that are universally agreed upon with the community, that really aim towards inclusion. I mean, inclusion and quality of life really are sort of the core mandates of that initiative. And I think it's a really nice way to make sure that there is equity across the system.
I mean, theoretically, and whether you're an autistic kid in Alberta or in Ontario, there's a floor of services that presumably you're entitled to. Fair?
Yes, yes. If it's rolled out properly, a national autism strategy is a great idea. The question is, will it be? And we're a bit skeptical about it. In the United States, they have a national strategy and they have an advisory board that's comprised as well as of members of the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. Not just hearing lived experiences, but hearing ideas from autistic and other disabled people. I think that's a really core component, and we haven't seen that yet in the national strategy.
Gotcha. That's our time, everybody. I want to thank you all for coming into TVO tonight, helping us understand this better. Jessica Bryan from Hull and Bloorview over here, Margaret Spolstra from Autism Ontario, and Anne Borden-King, Autistics for Autistics Ontario. It's really great to have all of you here. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Antimicrobial resistance is when germs are no longer responsive to the drugs used to treat them, and it's a growing concern in public health. I visited student scientists at Carleton University in Ottawa who are taking part in a global initiative in hopes of unearthing a cure.
Oh, look at that plant. I love it.
Student scientists at Carleton University are on the hunt for a solution. For the past 2 years, they've been wandering parts of the Ottawa area, turning over rocks and walking along waterways in hopes of collecting the perfect soil sample.
We're actually right beside a groundhog hole. There's some nice moss and other plant life in the area, and right on the banks of the river.
Students like Carly aren't interested in the dirt itself, but rather the millions of bacteria that live in it. Bacteria are all around us. These tiny microorganisms can't be seen with the naked eye, yet they can make us extremely sick. However, some bacteria produce antibiotics that can fight off infection.
So make sure you don't touch the ends of the spatulas again.
Students at Carleton are hoping to discover new bacteria to help fight a growing concern in public health: antibiotic resistance.
Antimicrobial resistance is really when these antibiotics or antimicrobials that we have don't work anymore. It kind of works just through natural evolution, where the bacteria or the other microorganisms, they will adapt to their environment. And so if we continuously expose them to different antibiotics, for example, we're creating an environment that will allow them essentially to adapt.
Laura Piquel is an instructor at Carleton University's Department of Health Sciences. With the help of student scientists, she's helping to discover new antibiotics in an untapped resource.
We know that most of the antibiotics that we have are actually naturally derived from microorganisms, and most of which actually we find in the soil. And so the strategies that we've always used in the past has been to try to find bacteria that live in different environments that naturally produce antibiotics, and we try to sort of discover them and find new ones that might work against the resistant bacteria.
According to Pakel, many pharmaceutical companies are no longer interested in antibiotic research because it's not a profitable venture.
Because it takes up to a decade to fully develop antibiotic through the pipeline, as well as millions and millions of dollars, and in the end there might be just a few people, like a small proportion of people who we're going to give these antibiotics to. These companies are not going to make their money back, and so there's been a huge disinvestment in industry in terms of developing these new antibiotics, and a lot of it has been left then to academia.
According to the World Health Organization, antimicrobial resistance is one of the top global public health threats. At the World Economic Forum, it was predicted that antibiotic resistance could kill 10 million people annually by 2050. We often hear about the misuse and overuse of antibiotics within the healthcare system, but human patients aren't the only driver of antibiotic resistance.
But we also find it in agriculture, particularly the animal for food production. It allows these resistant microorganisms to grow within our food systems. It trickles into our water, and then we consume or we come into contact with animals that might carry these various resistant microorganisms. So the World Health Organization has predicted that if we don't do something about this crisis that we are in, and it's considered a global health crisis, that in a couple of decades that the most prominent cause of death in humans is going to be these resistant strains.
The problem is especially alarming since some of the most well-known bacteria are now becoming resistant to antibiotics.
So tuberculosis is an example of that, where we have these extreme drug-resistant forms that are coming out that we actually have no antibiotics against at all. So we really need to work on solving this problem.
Anil Galapudi is a laboratory coordinator at Carleton University who works with the student scientists to grow the bacteria they've unearthed.
Basically, this is the media that supports the growth of the bacteria. So we grow the bacteria in the lab on a media in these plates called Petri dishes.
Pakel and Galapudi are part of a global project known as the Tiny Earth Initiative. The program has two goals: help solve the antibiotic resistance crisis by discovering antibiotics in soil bacteria, and help give students authentic research experience.
Tiny Earth is an international collaborative. It was started by Dr. Jo Handelsman, who is a professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And she saw this really great resource that we have that we could tap into to help solve this problem, which is our thousands and thousands of undergraduate students across the world who are really eager to get into research and to participate in solving a lot of these problems. We could really increase our chances of finding new antibiotics, as well as getting young students early in their scientific careers to really engage with research, and authentic type of research where they get to take ownership of their own projects.
So this is probably one of the few labs where you're doing an entire big project over the entire semester. So using my soil sample, which is what I carried on with through the entire 9 weeks, we do various tests.
The test only needs 1 gram of soil, which can contain 1 million bacteria. The first step is diluting the soil samples with a saline solution. Then, the solution is spread onto Petri dishes where the bacteria will grow into colonies. The colonies are then tested to see if they can produce an antibiotic that will inhibit other types of bacteria.
And then they're going to test it against some known microorganisms to see if they can inhibit growth of that bacteria. They'll spread another plate of petri dish full of agar with a known type of bacteria. They're known as escape pathogens that have been named by the WHO as the ones that are posing the greatest risk to us. The students will take the bacteria that they've isolated from their soil, they will put it on the plate, and then they will see if it can actually stop the growth of those escape-safe cousins.
And you can see here there's a clear zone where you don't see any bacterial growth around the antibiotic. So the antibiotic basically is not allowing the growth of the bacteria in its vicinity. So that makes this particular antibiotic effective against this particular bacteria. In this case, it's E. coli.
Once the students have successfully identified a promising bacteria, they will continue running tests, documenting their findings, and inputting them into the Tiny Earth database with the hope that it will be developed into antibiotic medications.
I think that was probably my favorite part about this lab. It's that it's not just a lab where you have a lab protocol, follow through, and then the next day it's something else. This was a lab where you actually had control and you could do a particular test several times if you needed to. And to know that you'll actually have you're playing a role in potentially making something really helpful for the world. I think that not only puts a sense of responsibility, but also a sense of pride, because you know that you're doing this for a good cause and not just for grades.
We certainly hope that we can identify new antibiotics to get into the pipeline to solve this problem and to continue doing so that we can always try to stay one step ahead of the bacteria who are evolving so quickly. And then on the other hand, the hope is that we can really improve the diversity and retention of students in sciences so that they will, continue on, and they're our future in terms of developing and solving these big problems of today.
Tomorrow on the agenda.
I am firmly persuaded that if we mobilize to defend the best Europe we've ever got, we can still hang on to it. There could still be a European Union 50 years hence.
That's tomorrow on the agenda.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.